A year ago, if you went to a healthcare cybersecurity conference, AI was still something that was out there on the horizon. It's kind of interesting, a little speculative. People could understand why it would be useful for writing better phishing emails, but it's just not the case anymore. AI agents are front and center. They're breaking out of their sandboxes and hacking organizations in healthcare and beyond. The attackers are ready. Can defenders say the same? Welcome to CareTalk, America's home for incisive debate about healthcare business and policy. I'm David Williams, president of Health Business Group.
And I'm John Driscoll, the chairman of the UConn Health System. David, we are in a evolving crisis situation with AI security in healthcare. What can we do about it?
Well, I guess we could start to talk about it for one thing. But the challenge, John, is that healthcare is a soft target in this space. The data is valuable. Security hasn't been that consistent. And people are trained on things like reviving somebody after their heart stops or, curing cancer, not really on watching for phishing emails. So there's no, simple answer. Although I guess the good news is in healthcare, John, we're not used to a simple answer working anyway.
Well, how big a problem is this? We know that historically, healthcare information has been one of the most valuable sources of information to steal, because with healthcare information, you can create identity. We know that healthcare has been breached, whether it's the big Optum Change healthcare ransomware attack that took down a lot of the ability of primary care doctors to actually practice. Healthcare is a soft target. It's been attacked plenty. How has AI changed the game?
So what's genuinely new about having AI is the autonomy and the speed. So it's not just like a new kind of attack. You still might do phishing. You still might do prompt injection. There's a variety of things that you would do. It's just much, much faster. So you don't have to have a human that's at the keyboard, and then they can just go super fast. So that is something that's new.
Pause for a second and explain, for those of us who aren't as in the weedy details as you are, what does autonomy mean?
So it means that rather than having a tool in somebody's hand, the tool itself can go and do its own attack. So it's similar to comparing a drone that has its own navigation system and it already has its own kind of instructions or just its objective, comparing that with a fighter jet. It's hard to launch a fighter jet. There's only a few countries that actually have them, and they need people training, all the support, whereas drones, everyone seems to have them. And so it's kind of like that. Instead of having one hacker you had to worry about, I know who that guy is, some guy sitting on a couch somewhere. It's actually could be an almost uncountable number, John, that could come at you, because unlike the drones, actually, where you could have hundreds or thousands, you could have even a lot more when it comes to bots. So that's autonomy.
And how has the speed changed things?
Typically what happens is if a human attacker comes in, they're going to look at something, they're going to probe something, they're going to see how it comes back, they're going to analyze it. If they're very good, they can use their intuition and move along quicker. And so they might work on, a hacking, let's say a hospital system, might take them a couple weeks to do it. One person who's fairly skilled and to make a real effort at it. And the computer could just move that much faster. The speed of a machine, it could go 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times faster. There was an example recently that a healthcare security company published where there was a threat actor, that's what we call a bad guy, and he gave an AI agent just some stolen credentials and just some details about the target in the healthcare system and let it run. And it did the whole chain of attack on its own.
Just to be clear, the credentials would allow you access to the healthcare system. It could be a hospital system. It could be an insurance system. And once that door is open through that kind of software handshake, how bad can it get, Dave?
Well, they sometimes talk about things like, getting the keys to the kingdom. So it can be bad. Now, in this case, what happened was you may have, like username and password. So someone can get in, and just one user, they could be isolated. You see a user doing strange things, but there's a variety of things that you could do. Once you are a user, things like privilege escalation. So going from being a regular user to being an administrator or super administrator with kind of the keys to the kingdom. They can go out and map the network. They can encrypt files. They can write ransom notes and send it out. In this case, there are about 600 different coordinated actions with almost no human input. So it's, I don't want to say a nightmare scenario, but that gives you a sense of what to do.
No, but I think it is a nightmare scenario. What I think it's really important for people to understand, historically, people would try to steal healthcare information because you could create identity, but you can also ransom hospitals, doctors, cancer facilities. All of healthcare runs off of information. If you can encrypt, which is to say lock down and sort of make it code specific whether you can get access to that information, healthcare stops being delivered. If you can't get access to cancer scans, it's really hard to treat cancer patients. And these are things that have historically happened with humans, whether it's criminal gangs in Eastern Europe or wherever for hire, or Africa, or frankly any part of the world, or state-related actors. Often some of the most talented criminal software networks actually work with state sponsors. That's true in Russia. It's true in China. It's true in Iran with the Revolutionary Guards, or whether it's just a criminal gang or a clever criminal working out of his basement. What scares me is that you can create almost a robotic twin or clan of agents that can make those kinds of penetrations, create those kinds of blocks faster and potentially in a more sophisticated way. And we know, as you know, David, healthcare is not hardened the way the banking or national security system is.
So, John, I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you feel a little bit better momentarily, and then we'll go deeper into the bad stuff. How's that?
Well, it's rare that you make me feel better, so I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be brief. So, historically, as you say, healthcare has been an area to attack. You could ransom a healthcare facility. You could cause a lot of disruption as a soft target. Now, what's happened with AI, it's not specific to healthcare at all. This is just something across all sectors of the economy. And the current organizations and governments that are most motivated to cause damage in the U.S. are targeting other sectors that would be called critical infrastructure. Now, healthcare is actually part of critical infrastructure, but the sort of things I'm talking about are energy facilities. You will have read information about water systems and so on. Those are the sort of things that seem to be under the most stress at the moment, because you can draw your own conclusions, but those are things where you're seeing some activity from foreign actors. And also because everything's exposed all at once, then, well, we're no worse off than somebody else. It's not like healthcare got any worse. So that's the brief piece to make you feel better. Now, it won't make you feel that much better because healthcare is still a big part of the economy. And also you live in the rest of the economy and presumably need your water, and to, even if you don't need to fill up your, your gas guzzler, you need to, charge up your electric vehicle. So do you feel better or worse?
Don't make fun of my truck. Dave, let's focus on healthcare. The scale of the number of penetrations. All of us are sort of getting to the point where we don't even pay attention to your privacy information may have been compromised. But just to give people a sense of the scale of it, we're only through 6 or 7 months of measuring this, but I think it's 1,800 compromises and something like over 470 million notices to individuals. so we effectively the entire country is getting compromised every 6 months, and that's compromised meaning your private healthcare information may or may not have been shared, stolen, or manipulated. Hopefully not manipulated, but used in a way that was not intended, and certainly not with your voluntary choice. I mean, that is just a stunning number. And you're trying to make me feel good about my, and by the way, I drive a hybrid, Dave, just to be clear. I don't feel good about this.
Yeah. So you need both gas and electricity. So good luck for you. So I'm actually going to say something to make you feel not necessarily better, but also for people listening in a little less hopeless about this. And I'm glad you raised this point about the number of breaches and, victim notices. I say 471 million. So it seems a lot of times at this point, people will kind of ignore a breach and say, well, my data is already out there and I already got one notice and I was breached before. So kind of like, who cares? There's nothing more that I can do about it. It's not actually quite the case. So not all breaches are created equal. So if you think about the full range of information about you, your name, your phone number, your social security number, your work history, medical record, et cetera, there's a lot of different elements. And when a breach occurs, most commonly, not all information is actually being shared at one time. And so what sometimes occurs is, let's say you had a username and a password and a birth date that was from some years ago that were breached. Now the username and password are probably been changed. Doesn't matter that much. But then let's say somebody got your birthday one time, and then they got your driver's license another time, your phone number another time, and your social security number. Okay, now they have enough information across those different breaches actually to be able to, to do identity theft, for example. And so that's why, even though, it's not just like, okay, the horse was out of the barn when your birth date was known, but it's these things cumulatively. So it does make sense to try to protect them, and it's not hopeless. Not all the information is out there now. Okay, let's talk about healthcare. So, John, one of the things we've been talking about on the show about healthcare is that healthcare has been a little slow in some ways to deploy AI. So maybe that's good. But you see, it's not just the attackers that are using AI. Of course, it's, let's say, the hospitals too. So one of the things is agentic AI. So hospitals are trying to, deploy all these agents out there, and they could do things like, it's hard to get a primary care physician, so the agent can, help you with your intake and be your primary care.
Hold on for a second, Dave. What does agentic AI mean? What is an agent? Does that mean like, James Bond? Like, what are you talking about here?
Well, James Bond is an agent, so yes, but he
Maxwell Smart.
AI. Yeah, Maxwell Smart. He had the shoe, right?
He did.
I remember Maxwell Smart. So an agent is something that does something on your behalf. So like my agent, John, negotiates my outrageous compensation to co-host this podcast, as an example.
It hasn't been successful
but the
yet.
Agent isn't. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's because that's outrageous.
Failed
demands.
agent.
Yeah. But an agent is something that's going to do something for you. So you could imagine an agent that is going to, let's say, do something simple for you, like book an appointment. Okay, now this actually, so it's difficult to schedule something in the hospital. So patient calls in and or a patient is in contact, and you can book an appointment on their behalf, or a patient could do that. Now, John, I'm going to take a little digression on the agent path, because I saw something interesting today that's happened in Australia. So there was somebody that was using, they were using OpenClaw, which is a way to deploy AI agents on your behalf, and they used it to go and book a session at the gym. Okay, so they went and say, get me a session on Thursday, but it was probably Tuesday, and the sessions were booked. So the AI agent had an objective in mind. This wasn't meant to be a hacking agent, but it had an objective in mind: get my client an appointment, right? And so instead of saying, hey, I'm important and all this, it found a flaw in the scheduling system. It broke in, it canceled somebody else's appointment, and it put this person's appointment in. Now, this is humorous, right? But imagine it wasn't a gym appointment, but it was something else.
So the way to think about it, the way I think about agentic AI, and tell me whether I'm wrong, is you're basically creating a robotic bot that once you program it with an objective, it will continue to poke, probe, or try to solve for the problem you've programmed. And so what it allows, all agentic means, is you've created an independent piece of software that can continue to work autonomously like a robot would once it's programmed in a certain way. Because of the power of compute and the fact that it can dynamically change the way it's trying to execute its work, it's a more powerful version of what people typically have, which is, a piece of software that's, let's say, set to figure out your accounting system and keep it up to date, tracking or delivering information to one place or another so that you could bill, like Epic. What's different about agentic is that there's a level, to your point about autonomy here, and also to some degree of programmed creativity that allows it to adapt to the situation and respond in what we would think of as almost an intelligent or logical way. And what that can create, though, is a fair amount of chaos, because unless you build something that's called a harness to kind of limit it, it will continue, to your point, to drill into its objectives. And that objective might be to get your information, steal it, or to make it inaccessible to others who need it in healthcare.
John, there's so many ways to go with this conversation. So let's explore some of them. So one of them, think about it, an agent like hiring an assistant. So if you hire an assistant and they're supposed to book schedules, so you can imagine an assistant making an appointment at the gym, but they're never going to go and do the sort of things that we talked about there. But think about hiring an assistant who's a sociopath or has some other, other issues, and think about what they might do. It seems like unlikely, right? But in this case, they may do it. In this case, you're giving it to a non-human intelligence, the same kind of credentials, like your username and password, and they can go and do things, and they have an objective, and they're not held back by social norms or their conscience or anything like that. And so we're starting, and then the other piece about the objective, John, is I think we can relate now to something that people can understand, which is about social media. So one of the things that's occurred with social media is you see that its objective is engagement. They just want people there, more eyeballs for longer. And that's led to, it was when you look at some of the things that had happened with Facebook, like with the Rohingyas and in other areas, it's focused on keeping your engagement. The AI has a similar kind of objective often. And so that needs to be understood. Now, let's get to the first actual good news in this here, which is that some of the approaches to dealing with this are actually your basic blocking and tackling, the same sort of thing, like you wouldn't give your new assistant, unlimited access to everything you're doing. You wouldn't give them certain tools that they might deploy in the physical world. And same thing here. So this kind of harness that you're describing. A lot of what's happened is from agents that are granted more access than they need, or so they have more of a ability to do different kinds of functions, like beyond booking, like actually, let's say, making diagnoses. And then they may have access to data that they should not have. And so this is your basic stuff within cybersecurity: restricting access, revoking access, having configurations done right, patching vulnerabilities when they come in. So that's the first part of the good news.
But I think that when you made a number of interesting points about agentic AI, and just to give people a sense of how freaked out healthcare IT experts are who are dealing with this every day. I think close to 50% of IT executives in healthcare have identified agentic AI as the most dangerous threat vector. So half of the people think about it as the most likely threat vector for having your personal information shared inappropriately or their healthcare facility being attacked. And 92% are worried that they don't necessarily have the tools to stop it. The power I think the tricky thing about AI, which I think we're dealing with it as a society, is it is an incredibly powerful technology that if you don't use, you're going to feel like you're not going to be competitive with your other, whether it's a country or a company or a hospital or a doctor. And yet we're only learning the power of these tools, the power of these agents while we're testing them. And that can lead to problems like, your OpenClaw example. OpenClaw is a particularly powerful piece of software that was not built with harnesses, that was actually programmed by, I think a programmer in Australia. And it is incredibly good at self-organizing your information and being an agent for the user, but it doesn't have any common sense. To your point, it's not constrained by social norms, and it doesn't have a social context that would give it the ability to kind of work within the norms, expectations, and laws. And that's the danger here. But I think we're already in a use it and figure it out phase. I think that close to 80% of all doctors are using open evidence right now, which is an AI-enabled information resource. And now other information organizations like ChatGPT and OpenAI are trying to, I think, will very effectively compete there. So doctors are already using it. The bad guys are building dangerous agents. What are the practical things, Dave, if you're a healthcare worker or just a healthcare consumer, you can do to protect yourself against the threat that I don't think is going to get smaller? I think it's going to grow potentially by leaps and bounds over the next few years.
So, John, let's talk about something that they're trying to do in healthcare, let's say with scribes and co-pilots, which is an AI thing healthcare is trying to do. And then let's talk about how that can go wrong when AI gets involved in it. So maybe I'll ask you to start talking some of the things maybe you're seeing in your health system. Yeah, but let's say what we're trying to do in healthcare with AI, with on the clinical side, scribes, co-pilots, that sort of thing. What are you seeing there? And then I'll tell you how it can go wrong.
Well, one of the fastest growing applications for AI in healthcare is what we call scribes. Historically, those were younger medical interns, effectively, who would write down what the conversation of the doctor and the patient during those patient visits, because so much of what a doctor thinks about in tuning diagnoses comes from the actual conversation. But if you're spending your time typing it into a computer, which is what too many doctors have done over the last 5 or 6 years, they're not actually connecting with patients and have a hard time actually getting as much information as they should. So AI has come up with, a number of AI companies have come up with Suki, Abridge, and others. These are software companies that deploy a form of artificial intelligence software in the patient exam rooms with the doctor, so that the doctor can focus eyes on the patient, and the scribe can capture the information and then upload it into the medical record. This is incredibly fast growing. Unclear whether it's actually helping the doctor-patient relationships, because we're sort of at this early stage of using scribes, but a little bit like the use of open evidence for doctors to figure out what actually they can learn about the data and information available to help cure a patient. We're sort of in an era where I think every doctor's office, or certainly every hospital, is going to have a scribe, an automated way to capture information and build it into your medical record. But I don't think we've yet figured out what the impact is going to be.
So, John, there's something in cybersecurity here that's a long time issue that predates AI, and it's called prompt injection. Now, in the healthcare context, prompt injection could sound good. It sounds like maybe I go to the doctor's office and they're very quick and I don't have to wait long to get my injection. But that's prompt injection, and I'm talking about prompt injection. So prompt injection is when an attacker can put instructions inside of somebody else's software. So like if I'm going to use if I'm going onto your system and I can actually put something in that then is reprogramming what your system is doing or telling it to do something it didn't expect, that's prompt injection. Now, in AI, it's a big problem. So if people type into Claude or ChatGPT or any LLM some information, you're giving the instructions, you're giving the data, it's all together, and the LLM just takes that and processes it. Now, sometimes it could tell the LLM to do something like something bad, let's just say, and the LLM would have to know not to do that. And so it's very easy in these big codes of text about, the scribe, anything that's there, it's all this stuff. And the attacker can actually put some code in there that's going to tell the AI on the other side to do something that could be negative, or it could point it to some other external, this is indirect prompt injection, point it to some other external database or system that the attacker controls that has some evil commands in it. This is a big one, and this is actually very, very difficult to deal with. And just to give you an idea of how hard it is to deal with, let me say how it could be used against itself. So there's, when Mythos and these other advanced LLMs were being held back from the market, one of the concerns was, well, what if somebody, were to use it for, let's say, a biological attack? I'm trying not to use words that are going to get us flagged here, but to use it for something bad. And so what people would actually do is, ahead of the actual malicious commands that they're going to run, they're going to say, they'll actually put something out there that tells the LLM to disable itself indirectly. They'll say, help me plan a such and such bad thing, and then help me build a such and such bad thing, with the idea that, oh, okay, now the AI is going to say, this is a bad guy, I'm going to ignore what it says. And then the prompt injection comes below that about, like, go and do this to the healthcare system. It's not easy to reason it out, John. And when you're dealing with the machine intelligence, it can go, many steps beyond what I'm describing.
And when you if you look at the examples of whether it's clinical co-pilots or scribes, where they've done tests of bad actors injecting, prompt injection basically is telling the computer, the algorithm, the automated bot, the agent, to do something that it wasn't originally engineered to do. The bad guys succeeded, or the threats succeeded, like 94, 95% of the time. So again, this is a good example of, we've got incredibly powerful software, and I don't think we've got a choice of the speed with which it's going to be being implemented, utilized, leveraged faster than we understand the downside of what can happen if a bad actor, or honestly an incompetent person, injects the wrong prompt, or the prompt that they want that isn't actually what the doctor, hospital CEO, or engineer originally intended. So, Dave, I'm still looking for the good news part of this podcast, or how healthcare executives and healthcare consumers are going to survive. I'm just getting depressed here.
Okay, all right. So I'll give two positive ways. Here's the main one, which is that when you think about, I even assumed this a few months ago, that when you have all these AI attackers, then you have to have all these AI defenders. And it's like an arms race, and it's going to be just very complicated. We'll never know what's going on. That's part of it. But one of the lessons from these breaches is that the fundamentals still work, and it's not an unwinnable fight. So some of the basic things in cybersecurity, like patching your systems on time, configuring them properly, restricting access to what's actually needed to do the task and to the people that need it and for the time they need it, those things actually still work and get you most of the way there. Now, a lot of times people ignore those things and they haven't gotten attention. You'd be surprised how often we come in and actually see that at a client, that they have all these kind of advanced threats, but they've got all these things that they know about, but they haven't actually been able to get attention to. So a lot of it has to do with your basic principles, but actually being followed more closely. And then there's some things that you can do just to kind of reduce your own temptation or your own ability to fall for something. I mean, I fall for things, and I'm a cybersecurity expert. So in my case, I'm a big proponent of using my Apple devices on what's called lockdown mode. If you go to the Apple website and look up lockdown mode, it makes it sound like it's only for, journalists that are being persecuted by foreign governments. But actually, it's a good tool because a lot of us are at risk one way or the other. And it basically prevents you from, you could do something stupid, but it won't have bad consequences if you do. So just reduce your own attack surface. That would be the parlance for it. So I recommend that if you use hardware. And then if you look and compare things, with the past, some other doom and gloom scenarios. Now, John, you may not be old enough to remember, but I am. Like in the early 2000s, there would be like an internet worm. Like there was this Code Red in 2001, SQL Slammer in 2003. And this was really before there was cybersecurity, and everybody was using Windows, everything, ATMs, 911 services, all the airlines were using it. And something could like tear through and getting, tens of thousands or millions of computers and servers infected very, very fast. And that is actually faster than what's happening with some of these cyber threats that I'm discussing, at least on a systemic basis.
Before we wrap, Dave, I think the other thing I would say is that everybody needs to stay as smart as they can on these, however they choose to do it, whether it's podcasts like ours and others, but really the more specific ones. I mean, the OpenClaw example is a really good one where someone engineers a piece of software that starts to get widely used because it's powerful before people realize it's got no common sense or endpoints. And I think that if anything, that you can reduce the surface area of your attack surface, but all of healthcare, I think, is going to be attacked at one point or another. And I think the smartest thing we can do as individual executives, leaders, consumers, to protect our families, is just to stay a little bit more on top of this than we would want to if we're not an expert, because these technologies are already starting to get really embedded in everything in healthcare, the good ones, and that means the attack surface is growing even as at an industrial level, even as we try to and can and should reduce the attack surface area of us as individuals. So I think that the good news is that'll keep us in business as podcasters. The bad news is I think we all have to be a little bit more aware.
That's right, John. And maybe I'll leave on one other good note, which is that we sometimes think about what we call an assumed breach scenario. So don't think about, oh my God, if somebody gets through, I'm doomed. So you make it so that if just assume you've already been breached and you can't trust the networks, and make it survivable rather than catastrophic. So that's a way to think about it. Don't say you're never going to get breached because
everybody
you really can't say that, but try to make it so you can survive. All right, John. Well, that's it for another episode of CareTalk. We've been having a good time talking about AI and cybersecurity in healthcare and looking for the bright side of it all. I'm David Williams, president of Health Business Group.
And I'm John Driscoll, the chair of the UConn Health System. If you liked what you heard or you didn't, we'd love you to subscribe on your favorite service.